Yate, Seyoma. That was Navajo and Jemez Pueblo. My name is SABA, by the way. I am an aerosol artist coming from the Four Corners area. My mother is Navajo and my father is half Jemez and half Navajo. I have had a connection with both sides ever since I was a kid. Of course, I was exposed more to my Diné side, although we came to the feasts for as long as I can remember, and that was my home away from home and my family that I got to see at least twice a year. It always had a special place in my heart because when I went back to Farmington, I brought that with me. I like to tell people that New Mexico itself, the beauty of it is 20 years behind the most current city. And that's the blessing as well, because we still practice the way the originators, intended us to. The traditions we still uphold in the culture of hip hop, and our indigenous culture, right? With all of this and our direct connections to, our lineage. At the end of the day, my family there just really appreciated that I was interested, and that's kind of where the style started developing. I wanted to represent, both the communities I came from, and I let people know that my first language was hip hop, graffiti, dance, and music, spoken word, rapping, emceeing, because it was my first exposure to freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of practice. Hip hop introduced me to that, because in hip hop, you gotta keep it real, right? And you only know how real you are if you understand where you come from and how all of us have been through the gutters and back to be able to sit here and do this. I made it a point in my art to focus on houses, structures, sustainability, natural, organic ways of living with the planet. There was a point in time where we all knew the process of building a house and joined in the process, and that's where I seen it again in the Pueblo, right? Like, it's a duty to help versus buying a manufactured home or having some other company build your house or anything like that. So I'm like, what did we do before we had to get a loan? How did we survive? How did we have a house? So going back to the Pueblo side and also seeing my Navajo side build with just kind of living in our indigenous freeways, freeways in which we've been doing forever, up and down the Rio Grande. And so I started referring to these particular houses, both Pueblo and Navajo, as SABA huts. And the internet days, I kind of Googled SABA hut and come to find out it's a sacred space in Muslim culture and, all these other cultures, kind of like a church, and that's exactly what the home is. It's the most sacred spot we can all have. Some people may call it graffiti, but my graffiti has kind of evolved into these structures and this format of vigas upholding the roof, right? And that's similar, it mimics my life of all of these traditional ways, future ways, both underground and above ground ways that, I have to kind of uphold and sustain without really leaking. Although this is what we're doing now, right? It's kind of taboo in the underground graffiti culture to say anything about, you know, this, but now the graffiti is turned into murals, you know, and more, we try to bring more cultural representation into our neighborhoods, into our cities, into the places that we have to go to work at, you know. And also changing a lot of narrative through public art. But primarily representation, you know. The DNA that we hold, everything that we hold, right? This elder that told me I don't have to be so radical said, you just gotta take care of yourself and eat right and stay alive. And you're the most revolutionary person in this room, you know, because of who you are and where you come from. And I was just like, you got a point, you know? I'm a muralist. I get paid to paint now, you know? We do interviews like this to acknowledge that we are still here, you know? And that's a success, you know, today for me. I can't stress on how organic our lives are and continue to be. Meaning, like, this moment in time right here is so meant to be that I just let it flow, right? Just roll into it,